Today's video is about Japan. Kind of makes sense to go and talk about Japan after having talked about Germany, another economy that is basically full of issues. Japan has an amazing history of being a country with really high debt, and yet it still functions quite well. So Japan's debt, if I remember correctly, is 255% of its GDP. So a percentage of how much money it owes compared to how much it makes every year and the full output of the country. But of course, the country doesn't, as a state, as a government, doesn't collect the whole GDP every year. So, if they were to tax at 100% on everything, then they would, of course, collect all this money. But you can't run a country when you collect that much tax, the whole thing would fall apart. So they wouldn't be able to pay this off if they decided directly to just take all the money from the country. But I say if they would do that, if they were to tax at 100% and the economy would somehow keep working, it would take 2.5 years basically of taking all the money in the country and repaying the debt. But according to a Reddit comment, an interesting thing about Japan's debt is that the money is owed to itself and in yen. So if the value of the yen falls, the debt is basically still the same compared to if you're a country that owes a lot of money to maybe the USA or other places like that, and the your own currency gets eroded, the debt that you owe gets bigger and bigger due to currency exchanges. And there's a little argument here about that Greece owes debt in euro and the debt was controlled by foreigners. Therefore, when the economy went bad in Greece, there was the Germans and the French banks who wanted the money back. And yeah, basically a lot messier than what's happening in Japan. Japan, yeah, so here we see a bit of the graph, Japan national debt to GDP ratio and the way it's gone up and gone up and gone up. Like all countries in the world, to be honest, nothing that's special about that. It's just the fact that it's so high. And we can ask ourselves, why is it so high? Well, like in my Germany video, we look at demographics. Here's the pyramid, the population pyramid of Japan. Very unhealthy for economic reasons. Not saying that the population is unhealthy, just that it's bad for, yeah, basically stimulating growth. And also, again, maybe I didn't explain in my last video how well this graph actually works, but basically what you have is it shows how many people are in each age bracket. And the wider the line is on left or right, the more people are in that age bracket. So blue is males and red is females. And what we have here is not enough young people in the lower ranges from 0 to 30 to pay all of these pensions for the 60 and above. And there's a big group of people here, 40 to 50, that kind of peak there, who will be going into retirement at 40 to 60. So they'll all be going into retirement and you'll be expecting these people to pay for it. Doesn't really work that easily. That's kind of the issue. There's some stats here. For example, the fertility rate, i.e. how many children are being born per year per person, 1.26, so per woman. The replacement rate is 2.1, so not enough people being born to replace this this hole here basically. Also, we can take a quick look at the population trends. 1920s, 55 million, gradually growing every year by 5% at least. Okay, not every year, but over every period. And then we see in 1990, there's kind of a change, 123 million people, and now in 2020, only 3 million more. And we've actually had a drop in the decades since then, a few years. We go 25, 26, 27, 28, 27, 26 million, 126 million there. So a negative minus 0.7%. And population, that's not the only thing that has been negative in Japan. It's also been interest rates. Let me see if I can find the page directly with Japanese interest rates. No, not there. Here we go. When I opened this graph for the first time, I thought, okay, the graph isn't working, but no, let's go to 10 years. And there you see in 2016, they dropped the interest rate from 0% to negative 0.1%, which is very interesting. Basically, money, the bank's paying you to take a loan. That's kind of what that means. Now, of course, that's the interest rate that's given to the banks. So the banks are getting paid. So I guess for people on the street or for businesses, they're still paying a small bit of interest back, or maybe 0%, but basically it's a very easy money type of setup. And that's going to change soon, apparently, according to this article. Japan strives to control debt in face of rising rates. So they're going to be raising these rates pretty soon, as Japan has managed to hit its 2% inflation target. And I've been looking at the Bank of Japan statements. Very interesting. I hadn't done this before. This is the one on interest rates, but I was more interested in their statement. This is a statement made in Japanese at a meeting with local leaders, economic activities, prices, and monetary policy in Japan. I will begin by talking about the current situation of economic activity and prices. The pace of recovery in overseas economies has slowed. If you remember the Germany video, This is very relevant to Europe. So yeah, the recovery from COVID has slowed down. Chart 1, which I'll show you in a minute, shows, let's look at country by country. Yeah, the US economy has been firm, mainly led by private consumption. So again, US looking strong. European countries have kept slowing, and they look like they will continue to slow as interest rates goes up. However, they expect these economies to pick up again gradually once the slowing trend has passed. And actually, in my economics lecture, we talked about this actually, and that when inflation is high, yeah, rates go up, and we did a kind of interesting aggregate demand model and supply model for that. I won't get into it now because I don't want to go out too off topic. But the point being is, when inflation is high, you put up your rates. It's a very simple concept on the high level like that when you don't go down to all of the formulas. But point being anyway, that Japan looks like it's going to be going out of this negative interest rate cycle. Here's some graphs. Okay, I need to go down again. I don't want to spend too much time on these, but this is from the IMF. International Monetary Fund, I suppose. Global growth rate. This is interesting. Major economies' growth rates. Even though that statement said that the Eurozone's slowing. Here we go. This is it. So, yeah, United States 1.9% growth, 2.5% growth, 2%, 1.7%. Euro area 3.4 down to 0.5, 0.9, 0.17. So there's your recession in Germany. There's your recession in Europe. United Kingdom also on the same in recession. Japan kind of keeping it together this year, but next year, yeah, questionable. And then China, it actually mentioned China right here. Here we go. Extremely high uncertainty surround the Chinese economy, mainly owing to the effect of a slowdown in external demand and adjustment in the real estate market. Adjustment is a small way of saying what's happening in in China at the moment, with what looks like to be a very big crash imminent and already underway. And I'll just back myself up by quickly googling that. China crash. Okay, well, not aeroplanes. Economy. China's economic slump is here to stay. The collapse of China's Evergrande company, China's economic crash could lead to 2008 on steroids. A lot of speculation still, but apparently people don't know what's going on in China too well, because we still have these 5% annual growth pace. So even though people are forecasting a slowdown, so yeah, watch that space. I already made a video on that and got some feedback on that from comments saying, okay, it's US propaganda, China's totally fine, but let's wait and see. India doing relatively all right there. Let's go these graphs for a quick moment. So here we have real GDP growth. Japan slow, States pretty amazing, Euro area not as well. And then they've got some more. Oh yeah, this is interesting too. This is consumer prices. So basically looking at inflation. So 0% is the price doesn't change. What you want in an economy is to have 2% inflation on consumer prices, because that's better than not knowing what it will be, and 2% is kind of the number that the ECB and I think also the Fed in America, the central banks of those two areas, have set. So 2% is what you want. Japan has not had that. They've had 1%, and they've only just reached 2%. That's why they're going to raise their rates. In the States, yeah, you see these energy. White is energy, so that's the energy inflation after the 2022 Russia war. A big pump up there, and remember, the US and the euro both printed so much money during COVID that money was in the system. Too much money means too much, means prices going up when everything costs more. Yeah, so interesting thing here is you can see exactly when the energy kind of stops to be a problem there. 2023, that white thing disappears. The point being that energy prices no longer were going up, and yeah, the price is coming down there again. So I want to just look quickly at this idea that Japan is facing a reckoning with its zombie companies. Now, this is a Reuters article. The idea basically is that Japan has got a lot of smaller companies, which once the interest rates go up, they won't be able to react to that. And apparently they employ 60% of the country. And while big companies will do all right because they're quite resilient and they've been backed by people like Warren Buffett and they're doing quite well at the moment, their stocks are going up. Smaller companies could face big issues, and it's a kind of a thing to keep an eye on, especially in the concept that, again, Japan is so highly in debt. And yeah, I think that's basically all I wanted to talk about. It's just an interesting thing to have in mind, that a country can be so highly in debt and yet function, I suppose. And again, here, looking at the different economies, Greece super high in debt. Italy's there as well. The USA, more than its entire output per year in debt, and it's quite normal for countries to have so much debt these days, especially since quantitative easing happened. And yeah, when we look at the last decade, Japan, that's when they started going towards their quantitative easing program at the end of that in the 2000s in order to try and artificially stimulate growth.